going to do a fact stop. And you might have seen this before. I love this, and I just find people sort of go, wow. And we know this in some respects, and I think from applied learning we also know that this is why we do what we do. Retention rates, and it does fit into the puzzle of what we're sort of making at the moment. Okay, so I'm lecturing at the moment, so you're only going to retain 5% of this. I think I'm only going to probably retain 10. But you know, it's lecturing, as we know, it's just, yeah. Reading, 10%, unless it's Friday night time. Audio visual, 20%. And we do use that quite a bit as well, so 20% retention. Demonstration, 30%. Discussion groups, 50%. That's where we work as colleagues, I think, really, really well, and we do retain quite a bit from that. We need to do that a lot more than just emailing, you know, expecting people to read things. Let's get together and discuss more. Practice by doing. Now, this is where we sit. 75%, and teaching others immediate use of learning. 90% retention rate of what we do. That's why we work in applied learning. That's why it's just, we know how much leaps and bounds that these young people actually travel. There is a study, now I do apologise, for some reason I've forgotten what RIPN stands for, and someone might have heard about this actual project before, but there was a big study done at the University of South Australia, and it's about, you know, how do we actually connect young people to their learning worlds. And it is about, what they came up with basically 4 particular areas, and if you guys are going to look at this and go, yep, no brainer, these are the 4 areas we attempt to work in. The challenging learning tasks was found are the best ways of actually really engaging. And this is areas like making it relevant, sequential, you know, making the sequences linking, producing significant products is really, and I think a lot of us try and do that as well. Negotiation at stages throughout the learning as well. So that is what challenging is, so that they're constantly thinking about the learning that they're doing. Strong connectedness to their life worlds. This means that the themes and the ways that they work and what they connect to is about their life world. It is relevant to them, they can see it. And I'm going to quickly give you a program that actually does really, that picks up on that. It's about the functions within the classroom that are about connecting them as well. Number 3 is performative learning. I love this one because I think that you know, it's probably one of the best ways of affirming their learning and affirming where they can actually get to and the expectations that you set. We often say, oh, they don't have to perform, and it's not necessarily just performing, but it's about making authentic audiences available to them that aren't just teachers and aren't just peers. That, you know, performative learning is about making sure that their real product, their authentic product, which is in the challenging bit, is actually seen and I suppose is embraced by people outside of just the cohort that they work within. And the use of IT, we know that we'll try and sort of develop more ICT within our work, podcasting, you know, do videos, all those sort of things, but it does work. That is one of the best tools that we can actually use to connect them to their life worlds. Time check? Okay. I love this one too. This is the last quote, I promise you, but I use this, and actually I use this with my staff as well, because sometimes the challenge of the work that I do in working with partners and bringing them together to actually try and look at the best ways of resourcing things and making our life easier is about trying to take blinkers off and trying to get people to think in a different way, not telling them they have to think in a different way, but encouraging them to try and think about it. And, you know, stretching someone's mind, as we know, it never goes back to the same shape, and I think that's exciting. I love that. As long as it goes back into a decent shape. But. So we're going to just spend the next 10 minutes or so how we link the conditions and the context for learning in an action learning cycle. And this is the, I suppose this is the takeaway for you. There's nothing worse than sort of listening to someone and not having the opportunity to sort of probably contribute as much as you'd like. But there is a takeaway here, and it is something that I use. I actually use this framework if I'm going to develop a partnership. It's about asking the right questions and about honouring the knowledge and experience of other people before you bring people together as well, about making sure you reflect. So in your pack, you're going to see some particular things, and I'll just briefly take them through you. So there'll be action learning plus stages of planning, some really good questions that do help with working, and then there's a planning for teaching, and I'll just quickly take you through that. Now, as I said, I'm a convert to action learning. I love it. And think what is really important with this is that it just makes so much sense to young people if you get them into the notion that whenever they get towards the end of something, that you want to celebrate it by reflecting, by setting some new goals, and then you sort of go, and well done, this is what we've actually achieved together. I think it does come to the point too of the risk-taking and actually failure. You know, you get to the point and you build into the reflection phase that it is okay to actually make mistakes. You know, by doing that, you are going to take the next step. You're never going to make that mistake again. But when we plan for Teach, I think what's really important to remember is the fact that we need to make sure that whatever we do, again, meets a purpose. But we also need to make sure that we implement conditions for learning. We also need to look at the fact that we need to understand the educational context for learning as well. We also need to, of course, differentiate instruction, individualised learning, looking at styles, which I haven't touched on because I know that you guys touch on that all the time. But I think also too what we need to take into account, and this is again what I'm not going to touch on, but you do know this, and I think from an applied learning perspective especially well. But of the particular roles that we play when we walk into classrooms, when we're planning the teaching, we have to not just say, I'm going to be the teacher or the facilitator. Today I'm actually going to play the role of a monitor. I'm going to monitor, and I'm going to be explicit about that. Today, guys, I'm just going to monitor where you're at. So that they understand that that's really different to actually being a guide or explicit teaching. You know, sometimes you do know that you've got to stand there and you have to do the explicit teaching. In your planning, it's good to say, I'm going to have to spend 10 minutes teaching. I'm actually going to have to stand there and talk. But you build that in so that they actually honour and they understand the fact that you play multiple roles in a classroom. Tutoring, coaching, I mean, they're both really different. I love the fact that, you know, when I used to work in other universities in the education faculty and was very much working with young teachers and they were working in schools and you'd have to assess them and all that sort of, we've all been through that. And often what I found was, you know, the enjoyment and the successes that the teachers got as being learning teachers in the role that they played as a tutor was where they learnt the best skills as a teacher and as a facilitator and giving them the time to do that. But then often they said, but that's not real teaching. I need to stand in front of a classroom and perform and that's my teaching. And to actually break it up as to the multiple roles that you need to play and honour that and build that into the actual framework of the plan is really, really important. That's what we do every day. So when it comes to stages of plan and how that actually links within the nation learning cycle, that's what I'm just going to have a look at now. So stage one is really where, you know, any work we do is just building on what do we know, what are we doing this for, and what are we actually trying to learn. Stage two is the cultivating stage. What do we need, what will help us learn, and what will we do with the actual learning. And then stage three is reflecting. What do we do, what helped me or got into down the road, which again is that mistake or making the mistakes, acknowledging it, and what might I do with the information that I actually received. Now, as a planning, I suppose, opportunity, what we've got here is, I suppose, it's cyclical. It goes around and around and it should never stop. You don't just do this one project and put it aside. You have to keep coming back. And I think if you actually take this into account when you're doing things with colleagues, it's a real opportunity to work with colleagues to be able to discuss things and use these three steps. Now, you can probably see on my handout